Democrats and people who should be voting with Democrats didn't show up the way they should. Donald Trump maxed out his numbers and the other side didn't. So the enthusiasm, people chose to sit on their couch rather than come out and vote for either, for Kamala Harris or for Donald Trump. And I'm like, all right, well, this is America. You get what you get. Hey, Jamal, it's inauguration / coronation day today. How are you doing?
I guess I'm doing okay. This is, obviously not the day that we were all hoping for last summer, but it is the one that we got, right?
It's what America gave us. Thank you, America.
Thank you, America. Once again, we have Donald Trump. But I got to say, I was listening to Anand earlier, who I think you probably know Anand, and he was making the point that really we have to accept the fact that Donald Trump is not an aberration. Donald Trump
he's not.
He is part of us that we try to suppress, and it keeps coming back, maybe like a bad disease. And it just keeps coming back, and we keep having to deal with it, and it's not going away. We just have to figure out what we're going to do about it.
I remember this last election season, you and I spent so much time on TV analyzing and talking about voters here and numbers there. And the two things I consistently said, and I did not want to be right as much as I was like, this is real. We need to accept this and work with this, was one, 40% of Americans, when you ask them about how they prefer a government to work, they prefer an authoritarian / dictator who will tell them what to do, especially tell other people what to do. They prefer that. That is just a human thing. This idea that a democracy where you trade off rights and freedoms here and there that's an intellectual achievement. That's what made America unique. What we're experiencing now is very normal for the course of humanity. Two, that idea that we have of that we can be better than our own history. I'm like, okay, that still remains to be seen. But even with all of these risks, Democrats and people who should be voting with Democrats didn't show up the way they should. Donald Trump maxed out his numbers and the other side didn't. So the enthusiasm, people chose to sit on their couch rather than come out and vote for either, for Kamala Harris or for Donald Trump. And I'm like, all right, well, this is America. You get what you get.
So yeah, the other person who I listened to talk about this was Doris Kearns Goodwin. And what Dr. Goodwin said, I think she's a doctor. Let's just call her doctor because she's a smart person. So everybody's a smart person's a doctor in my house. So what Doris Kearns Goodwin was saying was that the things that have changed America have never really come from the politicians. It's always been from the people. It's always been the movements. It was the civil rights movement. It was the anti-slavery movement in the 1800s. It was the women who were fighting for suffrage. It was the gay rights movement. And then the politicians reacted to those movements. So what we are missing at this moment is really a case about this America that it is we all think we're trying to create, right? And we're going to work together. But it's an America that's against our tribal instincts. That's the thing that really also is a part of this. This has never really worked for a long time because we're trying to get people to do something that is just not really in our DNA, which is to substitute an ideological, philosophical tribe for a physical and familial one. And that's one that we're wrestling through.
And it's evolved and worked over time. But I will say, I did not listen to the speech today. I did read it because I think it's a responsible thing to do to know what the President of the United States is saying. And in it, I saw...
Was it as delivered or as written?
As delivered. So we know as delivered with Donald Trump. It's a very different thing. Like, I want to know what he said, not what people think he should say.
Yeah.
And I did not see in there any unifying theme of America at all. It was here's the things I'm going to do because we're not doing this whole thing that we've done before. And I'm going to say that America is going to get better because of it. Right. So it was very much all of you who voted for me, I'm going to work for you. Right. It's a very transactional dynamic. And again, I get it. I understand it. It's not necessarily where I want to raise my children and how I want them to think about the world, but it's a reality we have to deal with.
It's interesting you say that. So I had my kids today in the kitchen while I was watching this. It's a snow day here in my town. And so
see, we have Martin Luther King Day as the holiday.
Well,
so
it's all
the
those
irony,
things.
right? The
it's MLK
Day.
Yes.
and Trump inauguration. And I'm home celebrating MLK Day for the record.
Yes. So we had MLK Day, but it also snowed a lot. So we were outside shoveling the snow while they were playing in the snow. And but then afterwards, I had to watch this thing on TV. I wanted to watch it. So I'm in the kitchen and they're walking by. And so I said, "What's going on?" And there's Kamala Harris. And I said, "Yeah, she's leaving. She's not going to be vice president anymore." She said, "Oh, why not?" And then I had to explain to them because, Donald Trump, remember, he won the election. And so now he's going to be living in the White House. And they said, "Well, is Joe Biden going to be living there too?" I was like, "No, you only get to one person gets to live there at a time." He's the one. And I had to really have this conversation with them. Like, he's going to be the president. And of course, we respect the office of the president, the person what's happening with the office. But I don't want you to think you have to be like him. He's not somebody that I want you to be like. He's not somebody that I want you to look up to as a person. And it's kind of a tough conversation. I wasn't sure exactly how I should have it, but I also don't want them to be mean. And I said, "Look, he's kind of mean, and he's not kind, and he doesn't look out for people. He doesn't think people who look like me and you ought to be able to be happy and have fun and live in this country the same way everybody else does, and like your friends do. And I just think we have to be, thoughtful about that." And it was a tough conversation, but I felt like I had to have it.
Yeah, so 8 and 4-year-old,
Yeah, 7.
4-year-old living in a different universe right now, which is great.
Yes.
It's her world. We just happen to be in it. The 8-year-old understands that there's more going on around him, and he came to me the other day and said, "Mama, Donald Trump's going to be president until I'm 12 years old." And I thought, oh, 12-year-olds is nothing. You got your whole life ahead of you. Okay, this is great. And he was just like in shock that I'm going to be so much older by the time this happens. And I did 2 things with this. I said, similarly as you, the idea that it's not okay to be mean. And yes, sometimes people are in leadership who can be mean, and that's not okay. That's not how I want you to be. So we made that personal connection. And then I also got a little real about, this is what happens. People make choices, and not all choices are great for everybody. So I would like for you to make choices that consider other people, not just what you want, right? If that's the kind of leadership I want you to show and how I want you to be around people.
So we had a moment sort of like this in a soccer game about a week ago. My son was playing in a soccer game and his team won. And one of his friends was on the other soccer team, right? And his friend was having a really hard time. After the soccer game, he was kind of, he was mad about it, and he was crying a little bit. And my son went over to talk to his friend and gave him a hug and talked to him or whatever. And the mom was like, "That was just so sweet." And I was thinking, this is not me, by the way, because I've inherited it because my wife has been very good about raising their emotional intelligence. But it was absolutely right. It was the right thing to do that he went over there and did that. And I'm like, these are the kind of people we want to raise. I want you to win. I want you to fight to win. I want you to push to win. I want you to win. And then I want you to be generous, and I want you to be good to the people, because, sometimes things happen, and what happened the next week? They lost. And, it's like, listen, remember, some days you're going to win, and then some days you're going to lose. And you got to be a good person on both those days.
Well, I think this will have to be my final thought, because I do have, like I said, today I'm living in somebody else's world, and it's not Donald Trump's world. Let's put it clear. The idea of where we go from here and what we do about it. My last thought on this is that Joe Biden, in his last few days and last few words, finally recognized what's going on. And I wish, with that same anxiety you're hearing in the background, I wish that had been recognized, the reality of the world, in the early part of the administration, right? Because we could have used a big chunk of that type of, let's recognize what the problems are and let's tackle them head on, instead of pretending that we're still living in the same world. We could have used that in the last 4 years, and not just in the last week or so, of whether it's pardons or delivering speeches about the real threats facing America. I'm like, that's a sense of loss for me that I think I'll carry forward.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough time. Well, look, your kids, mine, I think all of America's kids, and frankly, kids around the world are going to have a very tough time, I think, over the next few years. But if we can build something in the midst of this trial, we will be like our parents and grandparents and the people who came before us, because life wasn't always great for them either. And they still built things that lasted and gave us the opportunities that we had. So that's
all right,
our work.
Jamal. Good to talk to you today.
You too. Happy Inauguration Day. Bye.